I couldn't help but fantasize about other movie families going through this same scenario as this film. If you could see another family featured in a film going through the same situations just to see how they behave, what questions they may ask, which family would you choose and why?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I would choose the Culkins
Yeah,
because there are so many of them. And I feel like it would be a really interesting sort of layered mind games. I think there would be a lot of mind games involved,
right.
probably less physical and more mental
Hmm.
in terms of games. Or it would be the Sheen Estevez family
Right. Yeah.
because that one I think would be full on like 100% physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about a fictional
Oh.
family?
A fictional film family. Um, it's a good fictional film family. My mind is a blank.
I think you're onto something. I think what's most interesting is just a family that has a lot of siblings in it because I feel like the parents will usually kind of take the fall, but
Yeah. And
or something that would just produce an interesting discussion because I immediately went to like before midnight, like
mhm.
seeing them, just their discussion. I kind of know who would probably take the fall for it all, but I'm curious about that discussion.
Well, I mean, Michael and I discussed this film as August Osage County with knives a
Yeah.
lot. So there, the family dynamic, I don't know that I could necessarily pinpoint a family that I am thinking about. It's, loosely based on Michael's own family dynamics. Uh,
Mm,
so, with the two older siblings and the two younger siblings, and that's something that I have a family of, I'm the youngest of three, so we don't have a similar dynamic. Um, but it's hard for me to say what I think a fictional film family would be like because I'm having trouble even thinking of what fictional film family I'm thinking about.
mm.
But let me see if it comes to me while we're talking. I'll
Fair
get back.
enough. Fair enough. Some of my favorite moments, because of how real they are, is when the family learns what they're gathering is about and how it develops. They separate to think about their lives and on such a profound level, like probably more deeply than they ever have, while still also like I'm sure they're having like real honest thoughts about it, but they're also like their defense is up because they have reasons for being around. They each have different responses when they're alone, and it says so much about them. I feel like, if I can say so myself, I feel like you're a master at bringing scale, whether emotionally, narratively, or character wise, to little moments. There's a lot that's accomplished there that others probably would take pages and pages of dialogue to communicate. So I'm curious what in your life may have contributed to sharpening this tool set for you as a storyteller.
I think it's my photography career, frankly. I
Mhm.
think that for nearly 20 years of a career, I've had to I've had to express all of the emotion and storytelling that I'm trying to accomplish in a single frame. And it is all of those quiet moments. There is no dialogue in photography. And so having my subjects emote to me so that I could capture a single frame and have it show emotion is something that I've found very, I mean, exciting in a way. It's like it's my favorite challenge, especially when I have very little time with a subject. As a photographer, I really like to try to create a quick rapport with them and try to get something out of them, a true moment.
Right.
Um, I really appreciate that compliment because that is something that I was really trying to achieve. But I do think that it comes from that idea that these quiet moments need to be as potent
Yeah.
as the dialogue moments. And dialogue is something that I mean, that's all brand new to me, coming from a photography background. So it was very important that those singular quiet moments felt as authentic because you don't have the dialogue to fall back on.
Right.
But it just involved a lot of talking to the actors about, what I felt was going on in their heads at that moment and what they felt was going on in their characters' heads at that moment, and really bringing it to the forefront, which they were all incredibly capable of doing. Um, the other trick is just having fantastic actors.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I know for your photography career, you said that you play mostly 90s music during the build and tear down of your sets to generate a vibe. What
Yes.
was the playlist to produce a vibe for this narrative and set?
No playlist because we had
Ooh,
to record sound. So sadly, no playlist, which is a huge bummer. But my trick, I have a different playlist for different moods. So for the vibe of the set, always 90s. If I
yeah,
need to be sad, it's like I have a sad playlist with like Sigur Rós and
yeah.
Broken Social Scene and um, things that get you really, really emotional. But I mean, that trick is something that I wish I could use more on set. Um, it was, it's certainly you feel the missing music on a film set.
I feel like just off that, our music tastes align, so that's really cool. But I want to talk a little bit about Bob. Bob is such a fascinating character in this film. The way he casualizes darkness is really haunting. So, how was it, if I may ask, to casualize the darkness of him? Because there's so many lines, like he just finds the humor in moments that just don't seem like they would be appropriate. But
Mhm.
yet, I found myself often leaning into like what he had to say.
Oh man, I think, so Enrico Colantoni, the script was written for him in the hopes that he would come on to play Bob. Michael told me early on, he said that I wrote one of these roles for Rico. You tell me what you think. The thing is, he's the loveliest human being that ever existed as a person. He doesn't have an innate darkness to him.
Yeah.
He's just, and he often plays the nice guy. So it was so much fun to bring him in to play this absolutely sinister character. And the key is sinister because I mean, talking about backstories with your cast. We talked so much about what his life was like, the Bob character, having, been in corrections, and how much horror he has seen, how numb he would have to become,
Right.
um, and how not, you've killed, you know, voluntarily, who have volunteered, you've killed thousands of people, and you've become so desensitized to it that the idea of anything you can say to him, he lets it roll off his back. He's so desensitized to it. But I think because Rico has this ability to be so stoic, um, and emotionless,
Hmm.
it made it so much tastier every time. And he had so much dialogue too, but those extended moments, there are a few instances where I really wanted the pause on him to feel uncomfortably long of
Yeah.
his reaction to whatever the situation was, because you can sort of see his wheels turning. Um, and I mean, it's just a testament to who he is as an actor, because there was a scene where um, Serena, who plays Mia, was crying and she was really getting herself, into this incredibly emotional state. And Rico was laughing
Yeah.
um, as this Bob character. And he is like the sweetest, like he would never want to actually see someone cry, but he got himself into this other mindset. It was honestly incredible to watch. There were times when he would do a monologue and the entire the entire crew and cast would applaud him after I said cut, because he just took it to such another place. But he just embodied that character so fully. I think we all watched kind of in horror as some of the things that he said, but then it made his scene where he talks about his wife, it made it so much more humanizing and so much more emotional, because you just have never seen him like that. And so the whole thing is almost like a build up to that moment. Um, and then you want to feel sympathy for him at that time, even though he's just this absolutely evil guy. But we also made it very a clear, delineation that he would never be the one to actually enact violence. Um, when possible. He was not the one holding the guns. He's not the one being threatening himself. He is the sort of the mastermind of all of that. And that kept him as this quiet presence rather than this gun-toting, aggressive presence. Um, but yes, a lot went into that character's development, but I can imagine anyone else playing that role.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I even want to go back and revisit some of the earlier sequences because as I kind of replayed in my head as you were describing the scene where he's laughing, like that's his probably most honest reaction to like somebody having like an emotional moment. And then
Mm.
like early on in the film where, somebody's like saying like, no, 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 like we need kind of like need space or something like for him to react. Uh, it almost seems like more, I don't know the right word, maybe transactional. Like it's almost like so systematic. Like he's like, oh, well, a real human being would probably respond this way. I'm
Yes.
going to go ahead and respond this way, but that's not really how I feel.
Absolutely. We our thought about Bob is that he's on autopilot.
Yeah.
He's so tired. He's so worn out. He's burnt out. He is just trying to put one foot in front of the other and, get to the end of his day. Um, yeah, like a robot would say, humans would do this. I'll do this now. What's the proper reaction? Whatever. That's the I'll do that.
Yeah. I particularly love this line Bob says about Peter Gallagher's character Charles and how his voice as a public figure made him want to listen.
Hmm.
Who makes you want to listen? Who is someone that you continually plug into and gather creative inspiration from?
Oh, that's such a good question. I can honestly say that I don't have one voice that I want to listen to. I actually honestly think that because of my visual background, I think I pick up on
Mm,
creating visuals first before I hear anything. So I'm absorbing through osmosis visually through everything. And I'm lucky enough to have friends who are incredibly talented artists too, that I get to experience their art too. But I've got two little kids. I've got a new puppy.
uh,
I think I'm being bombarded by content all the time.
sure.
Um, and I don't have a lot of quiet moments to
Mm,
listen, which is a little bit tricky sometimes. But I'm also reading a ton of scripts and stories and people's ideas, and it's really fun to get into new short stories, new scripts, things that I haven't had an opportunity to read before, new writers who I haven't met before. Um, Even if it's just like 100 pages here or there, um, it's a lot of fun just to see what other people are thinking about in the world.
right.
You know,
Yeah. By the way, I love that there's an actual social media account for What About Bob 42 in real life. Bob's social handle in this film. And there are actual pictures of how many popcorn kernels he didn't pop, that didn't pop. That
that's
was,
been there for years. I'm so glad you found it. I
yeah,
really hope people find it. It's one of my favorite Easter eggs.
yeah.
Yeah.
This was great. I really appreciate the conversation in the film, and I hope I didn't add any more stress to your life, but hug your new pup for me anyway. You have a lot of great work ahead of you, and I look forward to seeing it.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you.